A.E. Housman, 998-999. Very intellectual individual. With these two authors today, we're really kind of bridging the gap between the Victorian and the modern. We're really transitioning, and that's why these are the last authors that we'll focus on in this time period. Some of their philosophy, some of their writing styles, and things that motivated them, kind of bridge those gaps between the evolution of writing and so on. Very, very smart, intellectual man. Reading here about him, it's not necessarily significant for the course, but just to, the way that a poet's mind works, or a writer's mind, the more we know about it, the more we can understand and hopefully appreciate their work a little bit in finer detail. His studies of Greek and Latin, for the most part, were self-taught. Even after he, it said his nervous breakdown, and he went back the next year and finished his schooling, but not with honors, with a lesser degree. But he continued on his own time to go and study these classics. And in studying these classics, he got better and better and more refined and more educated. And eventually that's where his job took him. His career path at different colleges and heads of departments and things like that. Most of his poetry, especially towards the end, if you look on the right there, the Grief and Poetry era, especially the last of his poetry, dealt with, a lot of the pain that he struggled with growing up. The death of his mother was pretty traumatic. If you've noticed, some of the, most famous musicians, a lot of their work comes from some of the pain and torment and struggle that they've had throughout their lives. And you almost wonder, would they be able to have obtained that enlightenment without suffering that pain? So can truly anybody be rock star? Do you really have to be a troubled, childhood or something? So I mean, it's just something that people debate here and there. But with Housman, he can tap into that pain and that darkness and that loss and help, hopefully other people and help spread emotion through and through. To an athlete dying young, on page 1000 for us. To an athlete dying young. There's an article that I'm going to have you take a look at later. It might even be active already. Some of you may have read it. You hear a lot of this, young students dying young, how tragic it was and things of that nature. And this is to an athlete dying young. It's the main focus. Look at what he says about that individual and how they can celebrate and reflect on that individual. And just follow along. It's a short one.
To an Athlete Dying Young by A.E. Housman. The time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you shoulder high. Today the road all runners come, shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at your threshold down, townsman of a stiller town. Smart lad to slip betimes away from fields where glory does not stay, and early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose. Eyes the shady night has shut cannot see the record cut, and silence sounds no worse than cheers after earth has stopped the ears. Now you will not swell the rout of lads that wore their honors out, runners whom renown outran, and the name died before the man. So set before its echoes fade the fleet foot on the sill of shade, and hold to the low lintel up the still defended challenge cup. And round that early laureled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead, and find unwithered on its curls the garland briefer than a girl's.
Okay, this one is an example of the literal element, a lyric poem. As we were listening to it, we kind of really sensed, a flow, a melody kind of, a nice little song to some degree. There was a good flow, a good meter, and all of that. From the first stanza, the time you won, they're reminiscing of, remember that time that we, carried you, cheered you, lifted you up in celebration of whatever accomplishment you had. Oh, that was wonderful. And then the second stanza is, well, we're doing this now. Today, the road all runners come. We're not talking about a race, okay? We're carrying you now shoulder high. What does that mean? Coffin in a casket. We're coming down the road that all runners come down. death. Everybody comes. Okay? And so it's kind of nice to see how well we remember and we can reflect on how we carried you in victory. And now we're carrying you, and it's sad. We're carrying you like everybody else. All of the other, descriptions in the following stanzas about, dying before the man. The name died before the man. And the last line, 24 there, the still defended challenge cup. And we're going to remember you and your hair and the stuff in your hair. What do they call it? And around that early laureled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead and find unwithered on its curls the garland briefer than a girl's. So we will remember you as this champion, as this victor. If you look at old Olympics pictures and such, it was a crown of victory, a little head thing that they would wear besides the medals and such. And so they would come and remember you. We would come and think about this. We would come and look at those as if they were curly, as so much stuff on it, as if they were a girl's. And so it's a piece that's, to an athlete die young. You already know what it's kind of about. But really, in essence, the main thing is the reflection of the past and kind of sad. But written in a lyrical kind of way, it's still kind of melodious and semi-enjoyable. Okay? The next one's much shorter. If that's possible. When I was 1 and 20. So when I was 21.
When I was 1 and 20, by A.E. Housman. When I was 1 and 20, I heard a wise man say, give crowns and pounds and guineas, but not your heart away. Give pearls away and rubies, but keep your fancy free. But I was 1 and 20, no use to talk to me. When I was 1 and 20, I heard him say again, the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. 'Tis paid with sighs aplenty, and sold for endless rue. And I am 2 and 20, and oh, 'tis true, 'tis true.
Okay. The first few lines, when I was 1 and 20, I heard a wise man say, give crowns and pounds and guineas, but don't give your heart away. So, don't give your heart away. Don't fall in love. You can spend money on them. You can give them all this stuff. But ultimately, don't you want to give them at this age? Don't give them your heart. Okay? But in the blue, I was 1 and 20 and no use to talk to me. I'm not hearing it. I'm 21. I know what's best. Right? You guys have all experienced that. Your folks, at this age tell you to do something. You're like, no way, I'm not going to do that. I know what's best. I know what I'm doing. You're not listening to the wise man or wise woman in that case. Okay? And he even noticed this. And you look at, because this is really told, this poem is told from kind of a past tense. Okay? Because you see at the very end, he goes, but now was it 2 and 20? The last couple lines. And I am 2 and 20, and oh, 'tis true, 'tis true. So within that year, from 21 to 22, what did he give away? His heart. He didn't listen to the wise man that he had heard mention that. Okay, so now he is crushed. Okay, he's been defeated to some degree. Because when I was 1 and 20, I heard him say again, all the heart out of the bosom was never given in vain. 'Tis paid with sighs aplenty and sold for endless rue. Sorrow, remorse, in the footnote there. Okay, so giving it out, okay, you're going to be getting some pain and you're opening yourself up for a lot of sorrow and remorse. And he gets struggled. So you can see this kind of as the lover's lament, which we haven't really done much of since the sonnets, when we talked about unrequited love. And remember how it seemed like all the guys were loving after the girls, but they weren't getting any attention or affection directed back at them. And so we see Housman here in When I Was 1 and 20. The kid kind of learns his issues, and still 22. That's still pretty young to learn a life lesson.